one agent who reveals Meghan has two characters, one concealed and one fictional, with a baffling tendency to switch from idolizing to belittling. And then you talk about that initial Vanity Fair piece that was so positive. One of the people that worked with her closely, Kashner, said she demanded that the media do what she expects. I felt manipulated and betrayed. I felt played, orchestrated. And then describing her experience guest editing British Vogue, she worked pretty closely with the actual editor in chief, Edward Enninful. And you say over the 7 months, Meghan persuaded herself she was editing the issue, explaining that the editorial team showed silent exasperation with her. The staff also wondered, did she consider that she had crossed the line in her relationship with an inful? Now, this week, while promoting his new magazine, 72, he was asked an inful whether he would feature Meghan in his new magazine. And he apparently paused before replying, Meghan and I had a great moment with the issue we did, but I feel like I have done it and I wouldn't necessarily repeat myself. That felt like such a cold and clever response to me. Just hearing that, what is your initial reaction? Is he telling us more than he means to tell us with that quote?
I think that the Vogue September issue, which was the biggest sale of Vogue in its history in 2019, clearly she put a lot into it, but it was all done for her. And it was a great success from her point of view and from Vogue's and his. They fell out um, over her attempt 3 years later to get the cover story when she went to Manchester and appeared in a One World charity event. And she wanted the cover and control of the content, and they had a huge argument. And that meant that he was really finished with her. He'd had enough of her prima donna behavior, and that's why he's dumped her. But also, I mean, from his point of view, what does she now bring? There isn't anything original. There's no great sales point there. And I think you've got to look at something else. You mentioned at the beginning Sam Kashner, who did the Vogue piece, Wild About Harry.
Yeah.
Now, that was a very interesting story there because I spent a lot of time talking to Kashner, and the whole chapter on the Vogue cover story is absolutely fascinating about her before she marries Harry. After the article, my book came out, Kashner went berserk and said that he'd never spoken to me and had no idea when he did speak to me what I'd written. And in fact, I'd called him and read him everything so that he knew. And why did he somersault? Because he was under pressure from Meghan. And Meghan, when she puts on pressure with all her lawyers and all the rest of it, is a terrifying machine. I mean, it's what you call the Sussex war machine. And Kashner felt it and was very upset about it. And I was upset that he was upset because I had behaved impeccably.
Mm-hmm.
But that is where Inful,
It
going
did
back
feel
to
like it
the,
did feel like a little ego was involved though, because he one of I remember one of the statements I read didn't actually deny that he spoke to you, but he said he didn't have a lisp or something like that, wasn't it? That he didn't he
well,
deny that he had a lisp or
you know,
something.
uh, I think what really happened was he was afraid that he wouldn't get future interviews with celebs if he'd spoken in that way.
Yeah.
Could he be trusted? I mean, I understand from his point of view. From my point of view, it was priceless. It was
Yeah.
fascinating. He gave great insight into the woman, which proved to be the truth. She's a manipulator and an oppressor and hates the free press if it's not doing exactly what she wants. And that is her problem now. That whatever she produces, there's a huge constituency, regardless of how good or how bad she is, who will say it's dreadful, boring. And you know, people, women journalists, especially in Britain, make their fortune by deriding everything she does. I mean, columns of the Times and the Mail, everything, are devoted to ridiculing Meghan Markle. And of course, that is terrible for her not to be the glowing icon which she wants to be, the great feminist, the person who received these prizes from the Kennedys or whoever, but an object and a vehicle for writing how ridiculous she is. And once you get that smell, once the smell of ridicule touches you, very hard to remove it.
When you mentioned the Manchester piece, wasn't it probably from Enninful's point of view inappropriate because the Queen had just died, hadn't she? So wouldn't that have been inappropriate to put Meghan on the cover of the magazine when Britain was still in mourning over the longest reigning queen that they'd had? I mean, it was still such a sensitive time.
I know, but she was about to die. But the argument had happened weeks before
Okay.
because their lead time is much longer. So the Queen didn't come into it. What came into it was he had a cover already. He didn't want her on the cover. And she tried to interfere with the online content. And he said, well, you can't control it. And that was her point. She wanted control. And that's where she's now falling out
Mm,
because people will increasingly will not give her control. I mean, what's the point?
yeah.
I mean, I think the first time it really went bad for her was an article in The Cut. And then the Hollywood Reporter was pretty rude about her. And
Yeah.
now Vanity Fair. I mean, it's tough on her. How does she recover? What does she do to stage the comeback? And that's always the story with these people. I mean, there's only two ways, either up or down. And at the moment, as we said right at the beginning, it's down.
They do cherry pick who they work with right now. I mean, even with People Magazine has just become this glorified Sussex press release outlet. We saw that Harry handpicked who was allowed to travel with him throughout his faux royal tour in the last few weeks. And of course, that led to a lot of positive press in his direction because the original source was ooey gooey and glowing because they had that access. Um, so they're definitely can still trying to control the media, and they have found some of those friendly outlets that will do exactly what they want. And I just don't trust those outlets now going forward. I never click on a People Magazine link because I know exactly who the source is, and I know that there's an ulterior motive.
Well, yes, you're right. What was remarkable about on his trip to Ukraine that he took a journalist from the Guardian newspaper, which is totally republic, very, very left wing, very anti-royalist, and has never had a good word to say for Harry. But
Mm-hmm.
clearly, and then they suckered into it because they couldn't believe their good luck to get such a story. Um, and even the Ukraine visit was a very clever bit of PR, which did work too. Harry is in a different position to Meghan because in the end, there's always a story. And you've got to remember, if, God forbid, something happened to the Prince of Wales and all his family, Harry would be the British king. He still is in the line of succession, and that must never be forgotten. So he can't be written off until William is king, and I think then he'll banish him forever. Whereas Meghan always has to fight for a place. She has to fight for the spotlight. She has to fight to be seen, and being seen is critical to her. And she can't. If there's another shooting, she can't fly there as she did to Uvalde in Texas before. People won't take her seriously, and that's her problem. What can she do so people take her seriously? And that is where she has very, very badly misplayed it. I mean, it was a great mistake to annoy the Vogue people, and a great mistake to annoy all these different journalists because you can only do it once. You can only behave badly once in these cases, and she's done it too often, and her number of supporters, so to speak, diminishes, and that's why People Magazine is still so important to her.
Mm. Ugh. Hard eye roll. Tom Bauer, thank you so much for your time today. You are a delight.
Thanks very much for having me.